It was an ordinary Thursday evening poised to turn into something quite extraordinary. Joyce, my wife, and I were in the kitchen, a space where we often found ourselves together preparing dinner. She was delicately mincing an onion while I busied myself slicing cheese and dicing ham for our omelets when she uttered words that halted my hands mid-task. "David, we've been married almost 7 years, and we've always been completely honest with each other, haven't we?" she said. I paused, setting down the knife. Of course we have. Honesty has been the foundation of our relationship since before we said, "I do." Joyce turned from the counter, her expression pensive. I met someone. Instantly, my senses tingled as if a bolt of electricity had surged through me. You met someone. What does that mean exactly? You met someone, I asked, though I feared I already knew the answer. A guy at work. A really nice guy. I've been having lunch with him, Joyce confessed. I'm guessing there's more to the story, so go on. Are you saying you met this really nice guy from work that you've been having lunch with, and you like him? Maybe like him a lot? I asked, my stomach churning with dread. A guilty look crossed her face as she averted her gaze. She nodded softly, yes. Suddenly, my appetite vanished, replaced by a sickening feeling in my stomach. But I knew I had to continue the conversation. Dropping the knife onto the cutting board, I placed both hands on the table to steady myself. How far has it gone, between you and this really nice guy? My voice was tense, and she could sense it as she backed up against the counter. We'd had lunch together every day for a few weeks, and we had dinner last week, but that was because of your late business meeting. Have you two held hands, kissed, or done anything more? Her face paled, and she nodded again. We've kissed. A sour taste filled my mouth, threatening to choke me. Did things go further than just a kiss? She glanced at me and shook her head. Not yet. I felt like I needed to sit down, so I grabbed the chair and sank into it. So you're considering it? She nodded jerkily. I think so. He wants me to go away with him for a weekend. And are you going? Yes, I don't want to hurt you, but I need to figure out what he means to me. I'm sorry, David. I know this hurts you, and I hate that, but I promised him I'd go. I couldn't just sneak off without telling you. We've always been honest with each other about everything. Can I ask where you're going? Las Vegas. Sharing a room, I suppose. He says he's reserved a suite. Big spender, huh? He thinks highly of me. I'm sure he does. When are you leaving? Tomorrow morning. Wow, you waited till the last second to tell me, huh? I waited to say something because I had to be absolutely sure I was going through with it before I hurt you. I almost chuckled at that, but it came out as more of a choked sob. That was considerate of you, Joyce. Does he know you're married? Yes, of course. I always wear my wedding rings. Do me a favor and don't wear them when you're in his bed in Las Vegas. David, I talk about you all the time when I'm with him. I'm sure you've had plenty of nice things to say about me to him, like I'm a nice guy just like him. But maybe you've also mentioned I'm a bit dull in bed, not the best provider, and I tend to leave 2 nail clippings on the carpet among other little flaws that pushed you away. She looked shocked. I've never said anything negative about you, David. He knows I love you. But apparently not enough to keep you from going away with him for a whole weekend. You love me, but maybe you're not in love with me. Is that it? No, I don't know. I'm confused. So you're seeking clarity in the arms of this really nice man who knows you're married but doesn't care. A few days and nights in Vegas with him to figure out your feelings for both of us. Has this really nice guy been tested for his STDs recently? He's not like that, David. He hasn't been with a woman in over 2 years. So he says, but I'd wager he's not being entirely truthful. He's a hunter, sees a beautiful married woman, and wants to conquer her. For guys like him, that's the real game. Steal a beautiful married woman and make her husband a cuckold. If he hasn't been tested, you might find out that what happens in Vegas doesn't stay in Vegas, and it could follow you home in a very unpleasant way. Is this nice guy your boss? No, he's my boss's boss. So you're really upgrading, huh? Climbing the corporate ladder with labor and talent seems pointless when you can use your body to reach your goals. I'm not sure what I'm doing, David, but I want to find out. And your crude approach isn't helping. I'm not in any condition to help you escape with another man for a weekend in Vegas. Let me ask you something. If I beg you not to go, if I get down on my knees and plead with you to stay here with me, will you do it? She glanced down at the floor and shook her head. I can't, David. I promised Frank I'd go with him, and I can't break my word. At least now I knew his name. Wow, I see. You can easily break the sacred vows you made to me 7 years ago, but you can't break your promise to Frank. Is that it? I'm sorry, David. I don't want to hurt you, but I have to do this for me. Please try to understand. I knew then that I'd lost her, but from my pain and misery, I had an idea. A parting shot that wouldn't change her mind, but might make her think about the impact of her actions on us. I stood up and turned to the basement door. Wait here. I want to show you something. Then I'll get out of your way, and you can get ready for your trip. I descended into the basement and searched until I found the Halloween prop I needed. After that, I opened our wall safe, took out a piece of paper, grabbed a hammer and some nails, and carried everything back up to the kitchen. Joyce gave me a bewildered look when she saw me hauling a small wooden coffin we typically use for Halloween decorations up the stairs. What's going on? She asked. Just bear with me for a moment. We've been together for so long, and before it all ends, I want to show you something, I said, placing the 3-foot wooden coffin on the kitchen table. I moved the sandwich fixings I'd been using onto the floor. This is a coffin. Well, it's a cheap Halloween prop, but still, it's a coffin. Here's the lid, and here's a hammer and some nails. Her expression turned uneasy as I showed her the hammer. And this, I said, holding up the paper I retrieved from the wall safe, is our marriage license. I opened the lid of the coffin, placed our marriage license inside, and closed it. David, what in the world are you doing? Put our marriage license back where you found it, Joyce said, her voice rising in alarm. Why, Joyce, it doesn't hold any significance anymore. It belongs here, inside the coffin, ready for its burial. She started tearing up. What are you talking about, David? It's proof that we're married, which won't be true anymore once you walk out that door to be with Frank tomorrow, I said. Now she was getting frantic. You don't know that, David. I don't know that. Ah, yes, Joyce, I'm well aware. Your choice is to run off with Frank. Mine, well, I choose divorce. Now, let's just take a moment. Our marriage license is right where it belongs, inside this coffin. I grabbed a nail and positioned it on the coffin lid, driving it through with a resounding thud that made Joyce jump. That's the first nail, symbolizing all those lunches and dinners you enjoyed with Frank, I said, adding another nail to an adjacent corner. And here's the second, representing those passionate kisses you shared with him. Joyce's eyes widened, her mouth trembling as she watched. I drove the third nail into the penultimate corner. This nail represents your agreement to go away with Frank, the really nice guy, to Vegas for the weekend, I said, holding up the final nail and positioning it at the fourth and last corner of the coffin. With one firm hit, I began driving it into the wood. That's the fourth nail, Joyce. You've heard the expression, the final nail in the coffin. It seals things for eternity, solidifying the fate of whoever or whatever is inside. Our marriage isn't that coffin, Joyce. When you leave for Las Vegas with Frank tomorrow morning, that last nail will seal it and our life together irreconcilably and irrevocably. You can't mean that, David. You can't throw us away over one indiscretion. I'm not the one tossing our relationship away, Joyce. You are. I've loved you with every fiber of my being. You're the most beautiful, captivating woman I've ever known, and it's been an honor and joy to call you my wife for the past 7 years. No, I'm not the one ending things here. If I could, I'd climb into that coffin and just to satisfy my curiosity and plunge the knife deeper into my heart. I began. Let me ask, if I checked the luggage you're packing, would I find some lingerie and maybe a negligee you bought just for this occasion? Joyce didn't answer, tears silently streaming down her face, but her expression said it all. That's what I thought, I said. I'm leaving now. I don't want to witness your final act of betrayal. I'll come back to collect what I need for the next couple of weeks after you've left with Frank. While you're in Vegas, though, I suspect you'll be too occupied warming Frank's bed to think of anything else. You might want to consider what items in the house you'd like to keep. I won't be here when you return, but my lawyer will be in touch in the next week or two. I grabbed my jacket, walked out the door, got in my car, and drove away. I had just experienced the most harrowing evening of my life, and I felt dead, numb from the inside out. I had no idea where I was headed, and I didn't care. I just needed to escape. Knowing I couldn't stomach anything, I sought out a Motel 6 on the far side of town from the airport. I wanted to avoid the temptation of hanging around the departure area. Curious about Frank, the seemingly nice guy. In the end, it didn't matter. He had won, or perhaps I had lost. My phone buzzed a few times, Joyce's name flashing on the caller ID, but I ignored it. I didn't want to hear her justifications for abandoning what I had always believed was a wonderful marriage. I slept fitfully, thoughts of them together plaguing my mind. How foolish I had been to think I could keep her forever. Early the next morning, I showered, put on the same clothes, and went to the nearest Denny's for coffee and toast. About all I felt like I could manage. Despite my efforts to push thoughts of Joyce aside, I found myself unable to escape them. I was trapped in a miserable vortex, imagining my wife, the woman I thought would always be by my side, holding hands with Frank on the plane, kissing him in the taxi, rushing through check-in to get to their room. I had heard descriptions of the pain of being cheated on, but I had never realized how completely debilitating it could be. At 8:30, I finally called my office to inform my assistant that I wouldn't be coming in. She asked if I was feeling unwell, and I replied affirmatively, adding that I hoped to be back to my usual self by Monday. After hanging up, I noticed a slew of missed calls from Joyce, along with a dozen text messages. I didn't delete them, nor did I bother to read them. The last message and call were from 7:45, so I assumed she'd given up trying to reach me when she left to be with Frank, the guy who'd stolen my wife. I refused to give him the label nice guy ever again. He was far from it. Revenge on him was inevitable. I just needed the right moment. To err on the side of caution, I waited until 10:30 to return home and gather what I needed for my new life as a single man. As I pulled into the driveway and opened the garage door, I saw that Joyce's car was missing. Reality hit me hard. She'd likely taken it to meet Frank, sparing herself the need for a taxi. I scolded myself for even considering the notion that she might have had a change of heart and stayed home. Get real, buddy, I muttered to myself. She dumped you. She found a better deal. Some guy who could whisk her away to Las Vegas and lavish her with expensive hotels. Wake up and move on. You might not find someone as stunning as her, but you'll find someone. Despite my words, deep down, I struggled to believe them. The house was unnervingly silent as I stepped inside, viewing it through the hazy lens of a man nursing a broken heart. It struck me as peculiar. Once it had exuded warmth and vitality, but now it felt cold and desolate. Moving through the kitchen, I noticed the remnants of cheese and ham I had accidentally scattered on the floor were gone, and the coffin was no longer occupying the table. It was probably tossed in the trash, indicating that my little attempt at persuasion hadn't made much of an impact on Joyce's decision-making. Lust, I reminded myself, can cloud judgment in profound ways. Ascending the stairs to the master bedroom, I pushed open the door. Inside, the coffin sat atop the bed, its lid partially lifted, a crowbar resting nearby. Someone, presumably Joyce, had gone to considerable lengths to pry some of those stubborn nails loose. Out of curiosity, I inspected further and discovered the marriage license I had hidden inside, now placed between the two pillows at the head of the bed. Looks like she didn't even want to grant me that victory. I muttered aloud. I turned towards the dresser to grab my underwear and socks, and there on the table by the window lay 3 sets of beautifully crafted, undoubtedly expensive women's underwear, torn into shreds, along with a yellow negligee, also in pieces. Atop the pile was a piece of paper with the words written in black marker. I cannot share what I do not own. What on earth? I exclaimed aloud. Glancing back at the bed, I noticed a similar note propped against the coffin. I cannot share what I do not own. The same message, in the same black ink. Suddenly, the screech of tires and the harsh collision of 2 cars echoed from outside, followed by the front door bursting open. David, where are you? Oh God, please be here, please, David. You have to be here so I can tell you how wrong I was, how horribly, stupidly wrong I was. A woman's voice screamed. I heard her footsteps rushing towards the stairs, followed by the sound of her stumbling and falling halfway up. She was sobbing uncontrollably, and as she glanced up and saw me standing at the top of the landing, she reached out her arms and began to crawl towards me. In all our 7 years of marriage, and 2 years of dating before that, I had never seen her in such a state. She wore no makeup, her hair was disheveled, her eyes were swollen and red, and she was clad in a Celtic sweatshirt, gray sweatpants, and a pair of fuzzy bunny slippers I had jokingly gifted her one Christmas. Joyce, what's going on? Where's Frank? I asked. She shook her head violently and replied, I can't give away what's not mine, David. That's what I told him. Told who? Frank. That's what I told him when he came to pick me up. I can't give away what's not mine. I was dressed just like this. He asked why I wasn't ready to go to Las Vegas with him. I repeated that I couldn't give away what's not mine. He said, "What the hell does that mean?" And I told him I couldn't go anywhere with him, would never go with him, would never speak to him again, because I don't belong to him. My body belongs only to my husband, and I will never share it with anyone else. She continued her slow crawl up the stairs towards me. He called me names, David. He said I was a slut and a tease, that I'd wasted his money on airfare and a suite at the Aria. He threatened to ruin my reputation at work, calling me a whore, and said he'd get me fired, but I told him he couldn't because I quit. He was so angry. His tires screeched for a block when he drove off. Finally reaching the landing, she wrapped her arms around my ankles and hugged my legs. "I'm so ashamed," she cried. "I hurt the only person who's always shown me love, who would do anything for me. I betrayed the trust of the man who means everything to me. I'm so sorry." And then she wept. She held on to me for what felt like an eternity, though it was probably just a few minutes. I was stunned, unable to move. The woman I adored, the center of my universe, who I worshipped with every fiber of my being, had shattered my heart. And now, half a day later, she was clinging to my legs, sobbing. Every fiber of my being urged me to gather her in my arms, to express how deeply I cherished her, and to assure her that we would navigate through this difficult time together. Yet I remained frozen, unable to move. The events of the past 15 hours flooded my mind. Though part of me believed she hadn't consummated her relationship with Frank, the sense of betrayal lingered. A married woman doesn't engage in intimate lunches and dinners, share passionate kisses, or plan a getaway in Las Vegas with another man. While she had come to her senses before any irrevocable harm was done, the betrayal cut deep. I stood there, gazing at the woman who until last night had been my entire world. It was clear she was in as much pain as I was. Our marriage hung precariously on the edge of a dark abyss, and I wondered if we possessed the strength to prevent ourselves from toppling over. Reaching down, I lifted Joyce to her feet and we embraced until her sobs subsided. "Let's brew some fresh coffee," I suggested. "Thank you, David." "Oh, David," she whispered. "I think I might have damaged your car when I pulled into the driveway just now." "Yeah, I heard it. We'll discuss that too," I assured her. I assisted her back downstairs and into the kitchen. As we savored our coffee, I inquired, "What made you change your mind? Last night, you seemed certain about going with Frank. What happened?" She glanced at me over her cup, her dark eyes still red and swollen. "You buried our marriage." "What do you mean?" "You placed our marriage license in that dreadful coffin and sealed the lid shut. After you left, I went upstairs to pack. But all I could think about was our marriage license trapped in that dark, dreadful place. Our marriage seemed over like you were burying it. It was in a place with no air, no light, and it couldn't escape. Then I started to think about all the wonderful things that license had given us, all it had meant to me. We were a team, so happy when we were together, and I remembered how happy you always made me. I suppose I dozed off because I dreamed I was in that coffin, in that dark place, and I felt like I was suffocating. It felt so real that it woke me up, and I knew I had to somehow open that coffin's lid and retrieve our marriage. Let it breathe again. Let me breathe again." She chuckled softly. "I never realized how cleverly you hid your tools. It took me at least an hour to find the crowbar and another half hour to haul that coffin up to the bedroom and pry the lid enough to get our license out. I felt possessed, like I had to retrieve it before you could seal the coffin shut. When did you decide not to go with Frank?" She giggled again, a sound that warmed my soul. "About 2 seconds after you left. I knew I could never go away with Frank or anyone else. I felt so foolish and ashamed. How could I treat the only man I've ever loved the way I treated you? I tried calling you over and over, but you wouldn't answer. Then I started texting, but that didn't work either. Much later, after I finally pried the coffin lid open enough to reach inside, I thought about how I would tell Frank I never wanted to see him again. I wiped off all my makeup and put on your old Caltech sweatshirt and sweatpants. My eyes were already red and swollen from crying, and I wondered how Frank would see me, the real me that you always see and still love. You're the most beautiful woman I've ever known, Joyce. Even now, you look perfect to me." And when I realized that, I knew I had to do everything in my power to win you back, to make you love me again. I hadn't packed much yet, but as I started to unpack, I saw the negligee, panties, and bra sets I'd bought for the trip with Frank, and I broke down again. Suddenly, just the sight of them made me sick. They were the final expression of my betrayal, and I had to destroy them. So I took my scissors and ripped them all up. They cost a lot of money, but I couldn't bear to look at them. I destroyed them just like I thought I destroyed you in our marriage. That's when I went to where I placed our marriage license, and I picked it up and studied it. It's really simple. It says that Joyce Russell and David Campbell were united in holy matrimony on June 12, 2005, witnessed by my maid of honor and your best man. But as I looked at it, it all came back to me. We stood in front of all our family and friends and gave ourselves to each other. We vowed to be faithful to each other until death, and I cried again, realizing I could not share myself with anyone but you. I cannot share what I do not own, and that's what I told Frank when he came to pick me up. Thank you for sharing. You've given me a lot to ponder. Do you think we'll make it through this and be okay?